Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if the Fashoda incident escalated. What was the Fashoda incident? As we know, the British Empire and the French colonial empire had huge ambitions in Africa. Africa became divided, mostly of course by the Brits and the French. Belgium, Portugal, Spain, Germany and Italy had some smaller colonies as well, but the French and the Brits, they were the ones calling the shots. Both countries tried to maximize their gains for geopolitical reasons and also to keep their rivals' colonial territory split up, while Britain tried to annex parts from Cairo, Egypt up until South Africa. France wanted to gain dominance in all of the Sahel region and even beyond. The French colonial party was very regretful that France didn't occupy Egypt together with Britain, and thus it gave rise to the idea to create an outpost on the Upper Nile River. The French hoped that with such an outpost they could potentially gain Egypt or at least influence that region. Of course, the Brits, they were very alarmed, but the French were not the only ones trying to get there. Italy too created an outpost. The Congo Free State sent also soldiers in that area, but it failed. The French sent Marchand, who was a veteran of the conquest of French Sudan. He reached Gabon, Libreville, and went to Brazzaville and steamed all his way up in the Ubangi River and went through the jungle of Sudan. It was clear that Britain had the upper hand in Africa. Why? Well, Britain had the navy, Britain had the soldiers, and even the likes of Marchand and the French foreign minister of the time, they knew about it. Moreover, they already had their issues with Germany, and being at odds with Britain would put France in a very precarious situation. Thus, in our timeline, in March 1899, the Anglo-French Convention of 1898 was signed. In there, it was agreed that the source of the Nile and the Congo rivers should mark the frontier between the French and the British spheres of influence. But what if all of that changed? What if the Fashoda incident escalated? Well, for starters, we need to have a possible point of divergence. We could just say that a certain foreign minister of France of that time, Théophile Delcassé, would not have been appointed, or he would just stay like his other predecessors for some other months at a maximum. Or we could say that his predecessor Gabriel Hanotaux would stay throughout the Fashoda incident as foreign minister. And I will go with this point of divergence. For some reason, Gabriel Hanotaux will be declared as a very good and competent foreign minister, and he will stay for a much longer time. What does this mean? First of all, with Théophile Delcassé out of the window, something like the Entente wouldn't happen at all. Théophile Delcassé had been credited as influential person for the creation of the Entente. He was anti-German, while Gabriel Hanotaux was an Anglophobe, and it was mostly due to him that the Fashoda crisis actually happened. And it was thanks to Delcassé that the Fashoda crisis was solved. By keeping Hanotaux, the crisis would extend, and we could see a war looming. The war will not happen immediately, no. Because even the veteran Marchand knew that it would be a lost cause. But once Hanotaux could convince some more people around him, and especially the upper people like the president for instance, it would be game on. The French will lose badly on sea. Due to the British naval power, France may lose even half of its fleet, or even more. This will already be a very big shock for the French people, and also for the world. Certainly, some French victories they could be achieved, but they would be so minor because the British Navy is just too powerful. The Fashoda War would be mainly fought in Africa, if we are speaking of land troops and land battles. France and Britain would hire many Africans who would fight a war which they never asked for, and we could see mutinies on both sides. But after losing more ships and after getting a blockade, the Brits will not only win the war but also seize several French colonies on top of that. This will show the world that a modern war between two ambitious and hungry empires would be determined on the sea and not on land. Something that Russia and Germany especially would take very seriously for the future. France would not lose any land in Europe, nor would they lose all of their colonies suddenly, or get severely punished. The Brits, they would understand that by alienating the French, it would be a very bad thing, and it's better to just punish them mightily so that they could still have an open door in case Germany might become too powerful, and the Brits would rather have a strong but punished France, stable enough to defend itself against the German Empire than having a German continental power. The Dreyfus Affair could radicalize more people, and the Dreyfus Affair will vanish from existence, and other problems will become more important in French politics. So we don't know whether the Dreyfus Affair will really radicalize people or if it will vanish, or actually both. One thing is for sure, there will be a new system, a new republic in France, because if a very big thing happens in French history, it always created some trouble. But France would not go under in a total anarchy. Britain was now in a very comfortable position, but they could face unrest from many Africans and especially from those places that lost their sons due to the Fashoda War. This could create problems, and not to mention the potential overextension we could see of the British Empire. As time moves on, Germany and Russia would build a better fleet, and the Russians would in this timeline win the war against the Japanese, or at least the war would result into a Pyrrhic victory for Japan. Russia would still have a few problems, but overall they would be in a better spot than in OTL, while France would have troubles which would compound over the years to come. World War One, or a World War One-like scenario, would still happen. And in this timeline, instead of the Russians falling fast, the French, they would fall really quickly. Instability, radical and extremist policies, divisions over colonial ambitions or not, land or navy, etc. would divide the French public in an unprecedented way not seen since the French Revolution. The moral would be on the ground, and the Germans, well, they would piece out the French separately but by taking huge advantage of them. We could see a revolution or some radical changes happening in France, and France would lose most, if not all, of their colonies by that point. The Brits would not be able to make a successful naval blockade, while the Russians were able to hold off the German invasion for a good time. At the end, some type of status quo was possible, but the Kaiser Wilhelm II would insist on keeping the colonies he won from the French. Britain would agree to it, because there was just no other way, and they knew that the Germans, they could actually support a much longer war effort, and the Brits, already having a second, bigger war, would be a little bit tired of these huge conflicts. Austria-Hungary, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and also France, they would see a wave of revolts, revolutions, and changes, unprecedented. And all of these changes, they would lead to other bigger problems. This will create a vicious circle in many places of the world. The only stable great powers were Germany, Britain and the US in this timeline. And with the upcoming depression, I can't really predict any further what could happen, but one thing is for sure. Austria-Hungary will collapse. The Ottoman Empire will also collapse. And parts of the Russian Empire will get independence, or at least fight very strongly for independence, while a revanchistic French government will come to power and challenge their German neighbor. Will the Brits ally with the French and try to beat this huge German empire, or will the German empire again just win, and will this new German empire be able to further dominate Europe and then the world? A new world war is looming in the dark. And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.